Power Rangers Prime issue 5 was incredible. If you're a fan of action, emotion, lore being weaved into the story, you're going to love this issue. You are definitely going to love this issue because this is setting up so much with the Prime universe because it's setting up our characters, it's setting up the lore around us, but not only that, there's still mystery around to this Power Rangers Prime universe because there's little Easter eggs and cameos in this that just raises further questions when you see them. So let's jump right into it. Let's not do the introductions. You know who I am. You know what you're here for. Let's jump into Power Rangers Prime issue 5. So the issue opens up with a flashback 4 years ago in the past, and we see the origins on how Mark and Orion became best friends. So the two of them are working this waiting job for this fancy party that the Altarians and the rich people are throwing. And during this party, you have these two guys that walk up to Mark and Orion, and they start harassing him. And one of the things that one of these people note is that Orion's home planet, Andresia, was decimated, and there were 0 survivors. Well, except for Orion, he's the only one. And you get to see the racism and the prejudice that you see within the Prime universe within this series, because one of them makes a comment by saying that Orion deserves to be put in a museum because he's the only one left. He shouldn't be wearing a suit, it's a waste on him. And then they make these offhand comments that Mark should be a pet because he's an equation. So you get to see the prejudice and the racism within the Power Rangers Prime universe towards the refugees who come to Earth. And that's not the first time we'll see this within this issue, because there's another offhand comment that we get within this issue as well. And we'll get to that when we get to that. So a fight almost breaks out between the two groups, but they're soon saved by Valentina, who comes in and splashes the drinks on one of the people's faces to sort of de-escalate the situation without making it worse. So the two of them get their asses saved back there. So after this situation, Orion and Mark soon become best friends, and this sort of sets up where we are now between the two characters and how they met. So once again, this flashback is setting up some big things for this issue, but not only that, it's sowing some seeds for later stuff we'll see later down the line in Power Rangers Prime. So definitely pay attention to this flashback because I feel like it's setting up for something really important later down the line. But not only that, it's also the origin stories on how Mark and Orion first met, and we see their friendship forming for the very first time. So after that flashback, we then cut to the present day where issue 4 last left off on, where John, Valentina, Orion, and Mark had gotten their Ranger powers, and their reactions to getting their powers for the very first time is probably not the reaction you were probably expecting. It's a lot of confusion, anger, and what the hell is going on here? So even the VR troopers are confused, with JB and Caitlin aren't sure what exactly is going on. JB under the impression that they can multiply now, and Caitlin makes a comment by saying different colors, are they warriors or are they crayons? And I really do like that remark. So after this, we then have Lauren getting really cocky, thinking now there's 5 Rangers here that they can take on these VR troopers. But Ryan's like, look, I know your life hasn't been easy. I know you've been on the run for a really long time. But do you want to subject these people to the same fate? Turn yourself in. So while Ryan's trying to talk down Lauren, Orion is materializing his own weapon, which is this giant mace that he forms, and he just walks up to Ryan and just swings it at him and knocks him back. And the whole reason why he did this is because, 1, he can't control his powers, so it just materialized in his hands, and 2, he wanted Ryan to stop talking, so he decided to hit him with the hammer or the mace, and he hit him too hard, which is kind of funny. So once again, you've got these brand new Rangers who are inexperienced and trying to learn how to control their powers, but also trying to get a grasp of everything that's going on. So with Ryan knocked back, Valentina runs over to him, but under the assumption that she's going for the attack, Caitlin opens fire and blasts her. And then John tries to figure out what's going on, like, why'd you shoot at her? And Ryan, like I said, he's trying to de-escalate the situation. He's like, look, I need you to help me. I'm trying to control this situation. And John then materializes his weapon, which is this giant bow staff that's got like a snake head at the end of it, and it's got like a ball in its mouth. It looks really freaking cool. Like, I can't wait to find find the actual themes of these rangers and what their motif is all about. Like, I've theorized, I've speculated with what they might be, but I can't wait to get the official confirmation. But we get Jun materializing his weapon, and soon after that, a big fight escalates between the two different teams, and we get this awesome double-page spread, and it looks really freaking amazing. So the giant battle breaks out between the VR troopers and the Prime Rangers, and you have this one scene where Jun is just swinging his weapon around, he's trying to get a good hit on Ryan, and just the area around him is getting destroyed because he's not able to land a single hit on him, and Ryan says, "Look, are you serious, Jun? You don't have to do this. This isn't your fight." And Jun questions him by saying, "Is this how it's going to end? You're going to take us all in?" And Ryan replies by saying, "It's my job. I have to do this." And Jun says, "Since when? Weren't you fighting mutants a couple of days ago? What do they have on you? What dirt do they have on you?" And we don't really get an answer to that question. So while that fight's going on, you then cut to Lauren and Caitlin getting into a fight, and Lauren gets her shit kicked in. Like, she gets her shit rocked by Caitlin. You have this one scene where Caitlin does this sort of like shadow clone, or she moves really fast where there's two of her, and Lauren gets kicked right for a wall. And Valentina tries to de-escalate the situation and tells Caitlin to stop, and she just nearly gets punched right in the face. But once again, Ryan is trying to de-escalate the situation by saying, "We can do this another way. They aren't mutants." But the other VR troopers reply with by saying, "Yeah, but they're rangers and we have our orders," which is another callback. Like Ryan said like a couple of issues ago, like, we have to do this. This is orders. We have to do the mission. And again, hearing the mutants get brought up again in this issue shows that this is when, like, mutants in this Power Rangers universe are being hunted, and I do wonder if that's going to lead into the Ransack of this universe, or we'll get the origins of Ransack in the Prime universe, and mutants are being hunted down within this universe. So I do wonder if we're going to get a follow-up on that, because hearing that mutants are being hunted down in the Prime universe is an interesting bit of information that we learn. And while this is all going down, you've got Orion and you've got Mark getting cornered by the Caitlin Shadow clones, and while they're getting cornered, the giant T-Rex that Rita brought to life comes to life once again and starts roaring. So you've got the giant T-Rex on the loose once again, and it's just causing havoc. So while this is all going on, you have Lauren waking up after she got knocked out, and Rita says some really interesting stuff to her by saying, "It looks like we both have some learning to do. I thought my morph would recreate the skill, but apparently not." And I like this callback, because usually when Rangers get the ability of being Rangers, they get all that fighting knowledge sort of built into their mind. Like, they know how to fight, like they know how to do all the legwork, like it's natural. But it looks like that isn't the case here. So while this is all going on, you've got the T-Rex going crazy, they're trying to dodge, duck, and weave out of the way, but you still have Lauren and Rita having their talk, where Lauren wants to go help them, but Rita says, "Look, given how helpful you were before, I doubt you can do much. I've created a distraction, let's let it do its work, and in the meantime, we're going to have a little chat, because there are two groups fighting out there, but only one team." And I like that observation that she makes. Like, there's two groups fighting out there, but only one of them is working as a team. She then makes a comment about all the other Rangers who are fighting right now, where Mark is paralyzed with fear and he's scrambling around. The Pink Ranger is enthusiastic, but he lacks any real skill. He swings his weapon like he's mining in a cave, and I do like that callback, because I believe Orion did work in the mines in the original universe in the Power Rangers TV show. She says that Jun is talented, but all that anger and emotion he's channeling, it's not letting him strategize when he fights. And the Yellow Ranger, well, the Yellow Ranger's too busy being torn between two different directions and has no idea where she stands on this situation. So yeah, Rita practically points it out by saying, "Look, your team is a mess, they're not working together, they have no coordination, they have no idea what they're doing, and if they keep fighting like this, they're probably going to get killed or even captured." So On the next panel, you have Rita and Lauren standing in this room, and this room is something to take notice of because they are standing in a room full of all these different Ranger weapons and morphers. One of the notable things you see on the wall behind them is the Dragon Dagger, but not only that, you also see the Lost Galaxy Morpher, and I believe I saw the textless version online, and I think behind one of the speech bubbles is, I believe, a Samurai Morpher, or it's one of the phone morphers that we've seen before, but you have all these different Ranger weapons and relics behind them on the wall, and that raises more questions. How did these end up in this museum? But Rita brings up a really good point by saying, look, you're standing in a room of relics, Lauren, something that your team will soon also become very quickly if you don't take action. And the solution right now is not to fight, and you probably know what you must do right now. And Lauren, with the shattered visor, looking really freaking badass. Like, the artwork here is freaking amazing. And she says, I need to survive right now. And on the next page, you see her jumping into action, grabbing Rita's wand, blowing up the T-Rex statue, or the T-Rex display coming back to life, explodes, and the VR troopers are caught in the explosion. And you have Ryan looking pissed off with his helmet all shattered. And that's really freaking cool because I haven't seen Matilda, what VR Troopers is based on, or one of the things that VR Troopers used footage on. But I don't know if they ever did the helmet shatter that you would see in Sentai and Kamen Rider later down the line. But seeing it here, it looks really freaking badass, especially the expression that Ryan is giving off right now, because the glare on the eyes on the VR Trooper's suit and the expression on his face, like he is looking pissed off, and I freaking love that. So the team managed to escape and make their way through the tunnels underground, trying to get out of this place before it's too late. And while this is all going on, Valentina starts crying and having a bit of a breakdown and starts blaming Lauren on why they're here and why everything went so bad. And Rita puts her in her place here, and I freaking love Rita in the Prime Universe. Like, she is just owning everyone here. Like, I know I was iffy about Rita being the possible mentor for the team, but if she's going to be written like this moving forward, then I freaking love her. Like, Rita in the Prime Universe is freaking badass. I love her. She's amazing. So, Valentina tries to blame this whole situation on almost everyone but herself here by saying this is Lauren's fault, this is Rita's fault, and Rita's like, look, you're the one who reached out and grabbed the power coin like everyone else. And Valentina tries to rebuttal by saying, my friend was in danger, I didn't really have a choice. And Rita says, look, that's why you're a ranger. Deep down in that scared yellow heart is a champion. And Valentina's like, look, I had a normal life before any of this stuff happened. And Rita's like, well, that was an illusion. And this ranger stuff, I was the best thing that ever happened to you. And within that moment, Valentina starts throwing hands with Rita, and Rita just immediately sidesteps her and puts her on her ass by saying, look, you have proven that you're not worthy, and drops her on her ass, like I mentioned earlier, like side smacks her with the staff. It's freaking amazing. So Valentina's like, look, John, we're leaving, or I'm going to tell your mother about everything. And John's like, look, we can't just abandon this ranger stuff. And Valentina's like, look, abandon what? What are you even doing this for? And John's like, our world. And she's like, you're Eltarian. So once again, John is fighting for this world. He's not fighting for Eltar, he's fighting for this world. So we kind of understand where he lies right now. So Valentina, again, still a bit of a bitch by saying, look, John, this isn't a game and you need to trust me. We need to go now. We still have time to fix this. And Rita, once again, with the sass, says to frickin' John by saying, run along, Eltarian, before you grow that spine you've been lacking. That is a badass line. I freaking love that line. That line is cold as fuck and I love it. So John and Valentina walk away, and Lauren's like, look, you're just going to let them leave? And Rita replies with this next line by saying, this part, again, we have no idea if this is like the old MMPR Rita from the previous continuity, Or is this like a brand new reader that we don't know about her past? But she says this by saying, I'm not interested in making mindless pawns. Not anymore. So that not anymore line raises a lot of suspicions. Like, what the hell is this reader about? Like, making mindless pawns? What is the history of this reader? What the hell is going on? Like, I have no idea. Like, that raises some red flags. Like, this might be the old reader, but then again, we don't know the backstory of this reader. But that raises a lot of questions because, like I said, she knew about all the Ranger stuff when they were in that room earlier. Then she makes this comment, like, what is Melissa cooking here? I have no idea, but it is raising so many eyebrows, so many questions. I can't wait to see where this is going to go next. So Valentina and John run away, and Orion's like by saying, he's gone, I can't find him. And once again, Rita with the sass by saying, are you thick? We just saw them all leave, where she's referring to John and Valentina. And Orion's like, not John, Mark is missing. And then on the final page, you see a police car driving away, and you have Ryan sitting in the car by saying, I need to warn you, I don't have a lot of patience right now. This has been a bad day for the both of us, and I'm sorry about what's about to happen, but I need answers, and you're going to give them to me. And then on the final panel, you have Mark in the back of the cop car, handcuffed, gagged, with a look of fear on his eye as he's being driven away, about to be interrogated by the VR troopers and possibly the Eltarian forces. And that is where issue 5 ends on that crazy note. So, with that said, I'm going to bring this review of Power Rangers Prime issue 5 to a close. This review, this recap, whatever you want to call it. But what did you guys think of this issue? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. And with that said, I will catch you guys later. Peace out, take care, and bye. So last month in Power Rangers Prime, it ended on a cliffhanger where the Rangers finally got their powers to morph and they went face to face with the VR troopers, but they were no match for them and they were forced to retreat. Unfortunately, Mark was left behind and he wasn't able to escape, and he ended up getting captured by the VR troopers, and now he's being interrogated by Ryan Steele as they're trying to interrogate him and get more answers about the Power Rangers. But the whole premise of this issue is that it doesn't really focus on the interrogation side of things with Mark and Ryan, is that it more dives into the past of Mark and we learn more about his backstory and what happened to Aquitar on that fateful day. Now with this issue, it does jump between the present day and the past with Mark growing up, but the timeline is really mumbled and jumbled with what it's setting up in this issue. So what I'm going to do with this review, with this recap, with this discussion of Power Rangers Prime issue 6 is I'm going to follow the flashback in chronological order with what years it took place in, and then I'm going to back around with the interrogation. But I want to focus on the interrogation first because you have Mark being interrogated by Ryan Steele, where Ryan Steele wants to get more information about the Power Rangers. And the thing is with the VR troopers within this Power Rangers universe is that it's been a very mixed bag with some fans with how the VR troopers have been acting in this issue, because not a lot of people like seeing the VR troopers as sort of the bad guys in this series. But like I've said before, they are just soldiers following orders, but they're still the characters you all know and love. They're just sort of under a different way of how they do things. But this does sort of pull from the VR Troopers TV show with stuff like that, because you have this one scene where Ryan is trying to be the good cop with Mark, and he says that, hey, your mum was an astronaut, my dad was a scientist, you've got a dog, I've got a dog, my dog is named Jet. Now, learning those lines by saying that, oh, Ryan's dad was a scientist and he's got a dog named Jet. This is still following the same sort of premise of Ryan from the VR Troopers TV show, but next month and leading into June, we are getting the VR Troopers spin-off within the Power Rangers Prime universe. And I feel like that's one thing that a lot of people have been curious to see with how is this going to all tie together with the Power Rangers Prime universe with the VR Troopers. So that is the one thing that a lot of people have been holding out for. But like I said, this issue is Mark getting interrogated by Ryan, but we're also sort of diving into Mark's past and learning what exactly happened on that fateful day. And with how this flashback is played out and how it ends, it is definitely a huge character growth moment for Mark, as it kind of understands why the character is the way he is and why he acts the way he does in some certain situations, especially with how he has been acting since the series began. But let's dive into that flashback as it opens up 27 years ago in the depths of space. So the very first flashback we see in chronological order takes place 27 years ago, where we see Mark's mother, who's an astronaut as mentioned before, floating through space, and it almost looks like it's the end for her. Now this does raise a lot of questions, like she was an astronaut, what was her mission in space, what was she doing in space, what was her objective in space, but as she's floating through the depths of space and it almost looks like it's the end for her, she's soon picked up by a spaceship. So after that we then get a bit of a time jump where it jumps forward to 16 years ago on the planet Aquitar, where we see a very, very young Mark who is basically a toddler, and you see them in the waters of Aquitar amongst the wildlife, and you have one of these sea creatures brush up against him, and it upsets him a fair bit. And this kind of sets up with what Mark's mother is sort of narrating, how Mark is afraid, and she tells him that it's not, well, she basically says, look, it's okay to be afraid, but you're stronger than all of this, and you can overcome it. But this definitely sets up the show that Mark, even since he was very young, he was a very scared child, very easily startled child, and scared of the world around him. So it's definitely setting up what's going to happen to Mark at the end of this issue, setting up his big character growth moment as the story goes on. Now, after that, you then get another bit of a time skip in Mark's past, where it's now 14 years ago, and it's Aquitar at the capital city of Analis 14 years ago. But Mark is basically a little bit older now. He's using an inhaler that we've seen him use before, but this is more of a traditional Ventinol or traditional inhaler that you've seen before, where you push down on it. And a lot of the other Aquitians make fun of him for using it by saying he's weak. And Mark doesn't like that he has to use an inhaler because, he's getting made fun of, they steal it from him, and his mother says, look, you don't need it most of the time. You need it only when you get a little bit anxious. So this shows that whenever Mark has, anxiety attacks, he gets nervous, he gets scared, that's when his breathing plays up and he needs to rely on the inhaler. So whenever he gets scared, whenever he gets frightened, that's when he relies on this inhaler. But Mark doesn't like it because it makes him look stupid. But his mother reassures him by saying, on Earth. But Mark says, look, we're not on Earth, we're here. And she's like, right, you're here, but one day I'll take you to Earth when it's free. Because the Eltarians say, look, Eltarians offer protection but not freedom, and Aquitar is determined to be free for now, which is kind of alluding to what happens later on in the issue. So those are some interesting things that you kind of learn within this sort of section of the flashback. One, Mark's mother is still kind of a mystery, and we'll definitely touch up upon her later. But hearing that Eltarian says, look, there's only certain planets that can come to Earth depending on how we judge you, but if your planet is free, you're a planet with lots of freedom, then we don't need you on this planet. We'll only take refugees and people who are sort of scraggling along and stuff like that. So that's an interesting perspective that they kind of have with everything going on with how they've sort of colonized Earth. Like they're only picking and choosing which planets they're going to be taking to Earth. The others, well, screw them, they got left behind. So that's an interesting perspective. But like I said, Mark's mother is still quite the mystery because we know nothing about her at this point. We know she was an astronaut, but we kind of don't know what led her up to going into space. So I really hope we get answers to that later down the line with what she was doing in space, and or even how she settled down on Aquitar after she came to the planet, because you, like I said, you have the flashback that takes 27 years at the beginning when we first see her floating in space, and then you have the flashback when she's sort of showing Mark the water life of Aquitar, which takes place a little bit like 10 years later. So makes you wonder what happened within that time skip, and who did she meet to sort of give birth to Mark? Like, who's the father in this situation, or who's the other parent in this situation if she chose to settle down? Is it a familiar legacy character we know within the Power Rangers universe, or is it someone completely different? That is a big question. So suddenly out of nowhere, the Beast Brigade soon invade Aquitar. So the Beast Brigade have been sort of built up to be this very big threat within the Power Rangers Prime universe history, where we don't know a lot about them, but we know that they invaded Earth Earth all those years ago, and then Eltar defeated him, and that's what led to them colonizing Earth. But it looks like the Beast Brigade also attacked Aquitar all those years ago. So I do hope we understand a little bit more about the Beast Brigade and sort of what their motives are, what they're about, because they just seem like this alien force that moves from planet to planet, sort of invading it and blowing the planets up, leaving a trail of destruction. Now, amongst all the chaos with everything going on, Mark and his mother try to escape everything happening, and Mark loses his little inhaler and he tries to pick it up, he tries to grab it while trying to escape as well, and his mother and this other Equation jump on this little jet ski raft to get away, but Mark tries reaching out to his mother, or she tries reaching out to him, but he's too scared to move and grab her hand to get on the raft, and this leads up to the raft being destroyed, and I assume that Mark's mother was killed within the explosion. Now, my rule set is that they're not dead until you see the body itself, but seeing how big that explosion was, I'm guessing no one could have survived that. But after everything going on, Mark takes hiding in a little case where he's almost discovered by one of the Beast Brigade monsters, but he's soon saved by an Eltarian soldier who comes to his rescue. But you see Mark inside this little cooler, this little chest that's full of water, and Mark is just like curled up, like sitting like hunched over. He's sort of like curled up into a little ball. He's sort of sucking on his inhaler. That shows how scared he is within this situation. So we've got 6-year-old Mark here. He's being called forward by all the Eltarians by saying refugee 082893 to step forward. So if you don't know what that number is, 082893, that is the original air date for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers from 30 plus years ago. But Mark is basically terrified. He's not speaking up. One of the other races that's a part of Kruger's race tried speaking up for him, but the Eltarians say, look, he can speak for himself if he wants to, but Mark is barely able to say a word. But the other Eltarians do examine his skills by noticing that he's Equation, but they do say that, look, maybe he prefers to be silent this way. But then looking at his stats, they find out that he's 6 years old, half human, half Equation, and that his mother is dead from the Beast Brigade attack. Now, I want to say allegedly dead, because like I said, nothing's confirmed until we see the body, but seeing how big that explosion is, we're not entirely sure who survived. But that is pretty much the flashback that led to Mark coming to Earth all those years ago, and we got a sort of bit of an insight on his past. And I'm sure that this is not the last Mark flashback we'll get as Power Rangers Prime moves on, because I get the feeling that Melissa will probably be opening more issues with different flashbacks that tie into Mark's past, and it's going to sort of tie things together moving forward, because this was sort of like his childhood with how he was raised on Aquitar and how he is the way he is, why he's so cowardly and stuff like that. What happened to his mother all those years ago, where he had that big traumatic experience from his past, and now we actually finally get an answer. But I feel like there's more questions to be asked with everything that was shown within this flashback. After that whole flashback, we then jump back to the present day where Ryan is still playing good cop, but you can see that he's sort of slowly breaking, and he's trying to get the answers from Mark, because the reason why he wants the answers is because he's trying to save someone he loves, that being Valentina, by saying, look, there's someone I love and I'm genuinely scared for them, and I don't know what's going to happen to her or you. And Mark says, look, you're afraid? I've been afraid my whole life. Too afraid to stand up for myself, too afraid to even tell the Eltarian patrollers where to find my mother's body, but now I've found the strength, and I can't let you take that from me. And within that moment, he summons his power coin into his hand, and he begins to morph by saying, I'm a Power Ranger Prime Blue. And the scene where he morphs is freaking fantastic, because within this whole interrogation scene, it takes place in sort of like this large space, this interrogation room, but there's been this pipe that's been leaking down on Mark's head. And what they do when he morphs, because he's the Blue Ranger, is you get this awesome sort of splash of the water when he transforms, and the helmet wraps around him. But Mark immediately transforms into his Prime Blue form. Ryan transforms as well. He morphs as well into his VR Trooper form. And immediately, freaking Mark begins to smack down on Ryan and starts clobbering him. He gets the upper hand in this fight. And Ryan's trying to say, look, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And Mark isn't having any of it. He's just clobbering the hell out of Ryan. Like he freaking does a shuriken on him and knocks him up into the air. It's freaking amazing. And it almost looks like he's going to win the fight here. He could have probably escaped in this time. But when it looks like he's got the upper hand in this fight, he's soon surprised attacked by JB and he's quickly knocked out. And JB's like, look, Ryan, are you okay? And Ryan's like, yeah, he caught me by surprise, but I gotta hand it to him. The kid's a fighter. He's gonna need it for what's coming. And that's pretty much where the issue ends, where Mark is passed out on the floor and they're sort of teasing more things to come within this sort of interrogation story arc that we're doing right now with Mark being in prison. But that was Power Rangers Prime issue 6. Once again, another solid issue. This issue was a great character moment for Mark where he's been the scared character ever since the series began, and with his newfound powers he's able to find bravery and stand up for himself. So once again, Melissa is cooking with this issue along with the entire team involved with Power Rangers Prime. Now, usually this is where I say at the end of the video, I will see you guys next month for the next issue of Power Rangers Prime with issue 7, but Power Rangers Prime will not be getting released next month in May. We'll be taking a bit of a break, but next week we are getting the VR Troopers Free Comic Book Day one-shot, and if I'm able to get my hands on that, which I probably will be able to get my hands on that, I will definitely be having a review for that up on the channel for you guys to check out. So with that said, I will bring this review of Power Rangers Prime issue 6 to a close, and I will see you guys later. Peace out, take care, and bye. Alright, so Power Rangers Prime issue 7. This issue, I feel like it's going to be a mixed bag amongst some people within the fandom because, you know, some people want their Power Ranger comics to be fighto and not talking, but if you pay close attention to this issue, it is introducing and setting up a lot of things around the world of Power Rangers Prime. We're introduced to our first Zord that is man-made, we see mutants and how they're treated and their sort of underground society, and we learn that some mutants come from the virtual reality world that is definitely going to be playing a role within the VR Troopers comic book coming out at the end of this month, because that line, if you miss it, you'll miss it, but if you pay attention, then you'll definitely catch on to what that mutant was talking about. Not only that, the end panel, the big twist at the end of this panel, is definitely setting up for something big with a character that I had no idea that would have an involvement in Power Rangers Prime, but Rita is on a mission to find this certain character who is in a tube. And I'll just leave it at that. So, without any further ado, let's get into Power Rangers Prime issue 7, and big special shout out to Boom Studios for sending me an early review copy for this issue. Okay, so it's been a while since we last had a Power Rangers Prime comic, but if you don't remember, at the end of issue 5, you kind of had the team split up and decide to do their own separate things. Valentina and Jun decided to walk away from the team for now as they decide to solve this their own way. Meanwhile, you've got Lauren, Bulk, Rita, and Orion down in the sewers trying to find a way out. Well, why that party is down in the sewers, they are attacked by mutants. And the reason why there are mutants underground within the Power Rangers Prime universe is because Earth is an Eltarian colony. So if you're not a registered citizen or you don't play by the rules, well, you slip through the cracks and you essentially get taken off the grid, you can say, in a way. So that's why there are mutants underground within the Power Rangers Prime universe, where it's people who probably didn't get their citizenship, they became outlaws, or they were sort of committed some kind of crime or probably accused of some kind of crime, and they just basically went underground, which is something we see later on within the issue. So while they're trying to fight off all these mutants, you have Orion surrounded by these smaller mutants who are wearing these masks, and Orion is very hesitant to fight back against them, and Rita just kind of snaps at the guy by saying, look, I have given you the power of the morphing grid. Do you not feel it inside of you? And after this, she just lays into him by saying, look, you're holding back. Does your heart bleed so easily that you would sacrifice it? In this madness, we have already lost our Red Ranger. I can't risk losing you as well. And I freaking love that speech that she gives him because, in this madness, Lauren got separated from the group, so who knows what happened to her. And Rita doesn't want to lose another ranger because, Mark's already gone missing. But seeing how Mark was already timid and weak and she probably doesn't know how much of a badass Mark has become, then she probably views Mark as dead weight, but probably does have some kind of potential. But Orion doesn't want to fight back against the smaller mutants because the reveal is they're just kids. He doesn't want to kick the crap out of kids. But let's jump back to Lauren. So Lauren is in the underground right now, and she's fighting off Rocksteady from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And she's just basically trying to avoid this rhinoceros because they keep charging at her, and she's like, look, you're going to bring this whole place down if you keep attacking us. And he doesn't care. The rhinoceros, screw that. If it takes you down with me, I'm fine with that. So while Lauren is trying to fight off this rhinoceros looking dude, the rhinoceros gets hit by this giant laser beam. And what came to Lauren's rescue is TZ. So if you don't know what TZ is the little Zord that was created by Mark and Orion a couple of months ago before the start of the series. We do see in a flashback with them bringing TZ to life, and not only that, in the free comic book day issue, you do see when they brought TZ home, and the big ending page for the free comic book day was TZ showing up at the museum. So TZ is quite the interesting character because it looks like this little dude goes on a bunch of little adventures and just finds whatever he can find. But yeah, TZ is really cool because he's a little T-Rex sentient. I don't want to call him a Zord just yet, but a lot of people have jumped on calling him a Zord, including myself, but that hasn't been confirmed yet. But if you look at him, he's basically got all the parts of a T-Rex Zord that we've seen within the past 30 years of Power Rangers. So yeah, he kind of is a Zord. He kind of isn't confirmed yet to be a Zord, but we're going to keep calling him a Zord. But TZ shows up and manages to help Lauren. So after talking with the mutants, there was a big misunderstanding that the mutants thought that the Rangers were VR troopers, but learning that the Power Rangers, any enemy of the Eltarians and the VR troopers, is a friend of theirs. So while they're making their way through the underground and going in deeper, they begin to have a conversation about how most of the mutants end up topside and they become fodder for the troopers. And Bulk replies by saying, look, I don't think it's all the mutants, just the one from the virtual, and then he gets cut off by the mutant. And hearing him say it's just the ones from the virtual makes me believe that there are mutants within the virtual reality world coming out of it and sort of running amok within the Prime universe, because we're only 20 or so days away from the first issue of the VR Troopers comic coming out, and that might reveal a lot with what's going on within the Power Rangers Prime universe, because from what I've been told by listening to interviews, or should I say from what I've heard from listening to interviews, is that it looks like that with each one of these issues coming out, with the VR Troopers comic and with the Power Rangers Prime comic, even though there's a couple of issues ahead of Power Rangers Prime with the VR Troopers, it looks like the stories are kind of coincide and add up. So things that happen in Power Rangers Prime are going to get referenced in VR Troopers and stuff like that. I believe that's what they've mentioned in interviews. Don't quote me on that, but it would make sense with everything going on within the world around it. We're finally introduced to the Belly, this big, giant underground city within the Power Rangers Prime universe, and it looks amazing. I feel like Michael did an amazing job with the background and all the city landscape and stuff like that, with this sort of underground city where the mutants live. And we meet up with Lauren once again, and she manages to find her father's samuraizer. And she asks, hey, where did you find this? How did you find this? And one of the mutants is like, that piece of junk? No idea. The little red robot brings us stuff and thinks it's a game. And Lauren's like, look, this belonged to my father. So Orion then goes on to explain by saying, look, that samuraizer came from the museum. There was a whole room of it until TZ broke into it during his activation. Then we got locked out. Got into a lot of trouble for it. Would have had lost TZ too if we hadn't hidden him. So that kind of leads up to the free comic book day issue we had last month. But learning this bit of information, Lauren soon finds out that her father or her family must be here in Angel Grove. Now, while this is all going on, we find out what happened to John and Valentina at the end of issue 5 and where they took off to running. Well, we find out they're attending this fancy party hosted by the mayor of Angel Grove, and we find out that the mayor of Angel Grove is none other than Valentina's father. And here, both parents, John's mother and Valentina's father, pull them both aside, and they have this moment where they seem caring towards their children, but then you have this moment where on both panels, they're both talking down to their children. You have this scene where Valentina's father is saying, look, we're privileged. You may think that John is your best friend, but at the end of the day, you're not one of them. Don't fool yourself into thinking any differently. And then you've got John's mother pulling him aside by saying, I have given you the kind of freedom that most Eltarian children could dream of, but sometimes I forget that you're not of Earth, and that will never do. Know your place. Do you understand, John? So it looks like we've got different perspectives on this prejudice and racism thing between the Eltarians and the humans, where you've got Valentina's father by saying, look, you're not one of them. You'll never be an Eltarian, so stop trying to fit in with them. And then you've got John's mother by saying, look, you're an Eltarian. Stop trying to commingle with this Earth stuff because you don't belong here. You shouldn't be acknowledging their lifestyles and what they do because you're Eltarian. You're the superior race here. So you've definitely got the parents inflicting their prejudices, and you could probably say their racism towards the Earth people, saying like, look, we don't belong with these people. We're the superior being. We shouldn't be commingling with them at all. We're never going to be one of them. So stop trying to act like you can be one of them or even blend in. I might be overanalyzing it with what I'm rambling on about, but that's kind of how I saw it when I read it. So Ryan soon shows up to this party, and you have him and Valentina sort of rekindle their relationship as they express their feelings out to one another, where Valentina is definitely scared of everything that's going on right now. She doesn't quite understand why everyone's afraid of rangers, but Ryan does break down of how she's feeling right now by saying, look, she's always been kind and she's always wanted to protect people, and she's always hidden it like that, acting like it's some kind of fault in her personality that she wants to protect people, which kind of explains a lot about her. But Ryan says, look, I know what you did, and I understand why you did it, but right now we both need to figure out how we can fix this mess. Now, there's a few other things going on in the background while this event is taking place. You hear these sort of conversations with all the people talking about this meteor shower and the Eltarian forces and the VR troopers working together to stop this unknown force, apparently, which could possibly be rangers out there or something going on in the virtual reality stuff with the mutants. Not entirely sure because we only hear one half of the conversation. But while this is all going on, John is trying to get a hold of Mark because he has no idea what happened to him. And eventually he walks in on Valentina and Ryan kissing, and he kind of takes out his frustration out on Ryan with everything that's happened, but Ryan is like, look, John, I'm just trying to help you, stop twisting it, and I want to make a trade. And he takes out Mark's phone and reveals that, yeah, he's seen the text messages of John trying to get a hold of him. Now, we kind of know what that trade is going to be from all the solicitations where they want to trade Lauren for Mark. And also, it looked like when John was walking around the place, it did look like that you had his mother turning her head to the side, seeming like that she's kind of catching on to the conversation that the three were having outside. So she might be onto something, and I get the feeling that she might intercept this trade-off that's going to be happening within the next couple of issues. And what this ends up leading to is it leads to John calling Orion on an unknown number, and while he's making this phone call, he's standing with Valentina and the other VR troopers, and Orion's like, hey, did you find Mark? He's not with us right now. Is he with you? And John's like, no, but I know where we can find him, but we'll need your help. And Orion's like, great, we can work together with that, but bring Lauren with you. We'll need all the help we can get. So this is the beginning of that trade-off or of that standoff we're going to get. And this is going to go down south really quickly because you've kind of got this interworking betrayal between the teams going off, and we're going to have this hostage situation that our other heroes aren't even aware of. So we'll see exactly how that goes down and what's exactly going to happen, because this is going to go south really freaking quick if the other rangers aren't aware of what exactly is going to go on, and it's going to be a whole setup just to trade Lauren for Mark in the end. So there's going to be a lot of heads bumping in this situation. And then we've got the final page reveal, and this caught me way off guard. I was not expecting this because this changes the game a lot. This is going to go down the way I think it's going to go down. So Rita takes notice of these strange items and there's power inside of them, but they're also standing in front of a bunch of tunnels, and Rita asks, how far do these tunnels go? And one of the mutants reply by saying, look, as far as we can make them, they need to go topside these days. Why do you want to go somewhere Pacific? And Rita replies with, actually, yes, there is somewhere Pacific I need to go. And then on the final panel, you see this unknown room and you see a giant tube in the middle of it. And if you know what a giant tube means, and you know what this futuristic tech means in the middle of the room, because it looks like a power chamber, it looks like a command center, it looks like Zordon actually does exist in this world somehow, but it's just a tube she's wanting to find. So does that mean Rita can sense this really strong power that could lead to somehow to bring Zordon to this world, or a Zordon of this world into there? I have no idea. But it raises so many questions, and I have no idea what Melissa is trying to pull off here. And we'll have to see where that's going to go in next month's issue with what Rita exactly is trying to do. But overall, that is Power Rangers Prime issue 7. What did you guys think of this issue? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Like I said, this issue was a little bit talky and not enough action-y, so some people might be upset with it. But it is definitely setting up the cogs in the machine for what's going to be happening in the next couple of issues moving forward to the big reveal in issue 9. So with that said, I'll catch you guys later. Peace out, take care, and bye. Power Rangers Prime issue 8 is finally here, and this issue is insane. Not only is it the end of the second story arc within the series, it ends on a crazy cliffhanger that we kind of knew that was coming with all the solicitations for later issues and stuff like that, but it ends with the 6th Ranger showing up within Power Rangers Prime. And we'll get to that in a bit, because if you've been following online and stuff like that, you kind of know who the 6th Ranger is in Power Rangers Prime. I won't get into it just yet. I'll either save that for the end of the video or save it for next month's review and stuff like that. But this is the end of the second story arc within Power Rangers Prime. And this second story arc has been a roller coaster of events with everything going on. And definitely a game-changing moments are going to be happening within this issue. So the issue opens up 1 month ago before everything went down, and you have Valentina and Ryan sparring. And after their sparring match, it looks like they're probably sparring to vent their frustrations out on each other, or sort of some kind of argument or disagreement they just had. But you find out that Valentina wants to protest to expand refugee rights, because her dad is the mayor and it will be good press for these things to happen. But Ryan is against it, because Ryan says the Eltarians are going to get caught in the crosshair. But Valentina does say that Jun will support her decision. But Ryan is weary of Jun because he says Jun isn't his mother, you can't trust him, saying that he's Eltarian, and when it comes to Eltarians, there's still a lot to be afraid of, which is an interesting note by Ryan, because, you know, he works under Eltarians, but he's like, look, I can trust the commander, she seems like a good person, but Jun, nah, fuck that guy, I don't trust him, he seems kind of shady, which is an interesting mindset that Ryan has, because, you know, he works under the Eltarian military, the Eltarian forces, but because Jun is kind of this rebel that's sort of throwing a wrench in everything and not following like his mother's way of doing things or the Eltarian code, then Ryan probably views Jun as a threat that can't be trusted, who is definitely going to cause a mess of things. So last month's issue had a couple of things going on that picks up in this issue. Last month's issue, you had Lauren finding her father's samuraiser, and also Rita was able to send some interesting morphin grid through one of these tunnels that she wants to check out. And this issue pretty much picks up where that last one left off on, where you have the heroes underground Angel Grove heading towards that area. And Lauren is under the impression that the Eltarians have her father because, you know, if she found her father's samurais, well, that means the Eltarians must have her father, like how they've got Mark. But Rita's like, look, you have no way of knowing that because these mutants could have gotten that morpher from anywhere. And this is where Rita begins to bump heads with Orion and Lauren. Not only that, she lays it on thick on Orion, giving it to him straight by saying, look, the reason why Mark was captured so quickly is because he was scared. And you'll know better because Orion, I can see the anger buried deep inside of you, and one day it will get you into trouble, and you'll find no outlet. Now, her saying that is definitely setting up something for Orion later down the line in the nearby future because, Orion probably has a lot of anger issues that we've seen, but we have yet to see him fully snap and fully vent with everything going on because if issue 10 is going to be a Jun-focused episode, I get the feeling that Melissa will be wanting to set up an Orion flashback or an Orion-focused issue later down the line with everything going on. But Rita's like, look, enough standing around. If you leave now, you will fail because you are not prepared. You need training. You need Zords. And Lauren's like, look, how would you know what we need? You're a demented space witch. And right away, Rita hits them with some magic and they start freaking out. And Rita's like, look, I am much more than you know. I have known goodness, I have known evil, and I know the pitfalls of both, which makes me wonder. I was kind of thrown off by it by a couple of issues ago, wondering what Rita is this, but hearing that line, it makes me wonder, is this Rita from the other universe in the Prime universe with that line? Because, that Rita was good, that Rita was bad, and she's kind of learnt a bit of both going back and forth. So we'll see what's going on. But Rita then says this, and this is true. The Morphin Grid does not play favorites. It manages a balance, and should you swallow yourself in your own hubris, it will correct them. So once again, she's right about that by saying, look, the Morphin Grid is the balance between good and evil, and if you just do your own thing, the Morphin Grid will correct that because, we can't have that balance thrown off. So there has to be that balance between good and evil, and if that balance is thrown off, then the Morphin Grid will correct that. And Rita is definitely right about that because the Prime Rangers have no experience being Rangers, right? Maybe Lauren has some experience, but we don't know the extent of that. But these Rangers have been Rangers for less than 24 hours within the time period of Power Rangers Prime, and their first fight was up against the VR Troopers and Altarian forces, so they were thrown into the fire right away and they barely made it out alive. So these Rangers have a long road ahead of them if they want to actually start working together and working in sync as a team. And we kind of do see that in this issue near the end, but we are far from having this team work in unison with everything going on around them. And this is probably we're very early into this story, so we have yet to see the team fully come together and start working together properly as an actual Ranger team. So hopefully Rita can be the proper mentor that these Rangers need and bring the team together. Rita then goes on to tell the two Rangers by saying, look, yes, I need Rangers, but I don't need you. As easily as I granted these powers, I can take them away. And Lauren and Orion decide to test that, and the three of them get into a fight. And we don't really get to see this fight, unfortunately. We get to see one panel of it, that's about it, of them charging towards each other. But we don't get to see how this fight actually went down. But you do find out that, both sides end up walking away, so I guess they were evenly matched or something like that, and Rita didn't take away their powers in the end. But I kind of wish we got to see that fight. Now, one character that's been fascinating to follow in Power Rangers Prime is Bulk in this universe because, we first met Bulk as this bumbling soldier in a way, and now he's just kind of along for the ride in Power Rangers Prime, and he's sort of questioning the world around him as a lot of his views and everything has changed within the Prime universe with how the world works around him. And he even says that he probably could have lived up here the whole time and not known about any of it, and he would have been okay. Because he says not everyone has to be a hero, but he brings up a point that I'm sure a lot of people ask themselves every day with everything they see going on in the world and everything happening around them. He says he knows now, but if he chooses to ignore it, does that make him a villain? So he's kind of questioning, like I said, questioning the things going on around him within this universe because it's opened up his eyes to this massive universe with how the Altarians work, how his fellow soldiers work, his views on Rangers and stuff like that. It's like a whole universe that has opened up around him. So while he's sort of talking to himself and TZ, I guess because TZ's there too, he's got this little jade orb and he throws it at the TZ to play fetch with, and he runs off to go find him. Where this takes him is to what seems to be a power chamber. So Bulk goes into this power chamber and Rita's there too, and Bulk keeps saying, oh, I might be a fugitive, I might not have a job anymore, and Rita says, well, you're still here, which is true. Bulk could have walked away from any of this any time, but he's stuck around thick and thin since issue 2, following Rita around. And Rita says, look, I could give you this babble and your freedom without a condition, but what would you do with it? And Bulk's like, I don't know. And Rita's like, do you consider yourself a hero? And Bulk says, no. But I've seen things now and it's hard for me to forget them, but it doesn't stop me from being afraid though. So Rita then compliments him by saying, look, perhaps you're not the idiot I thought you were. And she peers into the green orb, and you do see her reflection in the orb, but one thing you also do see within the reflection of the orb is what looks like the sort of Dragon Zord symbol, sort of like the footprint that you see that we all know about. So that's kind of a reflection we see in the orb. So shout out to Michael once again doing amazing artwork for this series. Like Michael once again is killing it and does a fantastic job with this series. And the artwork in this issue once again is amazing. Now Rita does raise the jade orb above her head and it begins sort of shooting out this green lightning. I'm not entirely sure what it does, but I think what she does is she uses it to power up the power chamber that we're in right now. And she then goes on to say by saying, this is a place lost to time, but the pull of the morphin grid was quite strong here. My skin tingles from power, how I was drawn to it. And then Bulk asks, saying, look, if you can do all of this stuff, why did you create Rangers? Why not take all this power for yourself? And Rita's like, oh, believe me, I tried. But perhaps I do not trust the power within myself, which is another interesting note about this Rita by saying, I don't trust the power within myself. And then you get this awesome, like, close-up of Rita drawn by Michael, and you have her eyes closed, and she says, perhaps I no longer understand what is good and what is evil. Again, this is another sort of possible tease. This is the Rita from the previous Boom universe, like the mainline universe from the Boom comics. So Rita that was trapped in the dumpster at the end. Like, I feel like that is that Rita. Like, this is that Rita. But she says, or what is the point of it either? Or perhaps it was the morphin grid who called out to me, who asked me an impossible task, and in my foolishness I accepted it, as I believed those children could be taken on it, or could take it on. And again, we get this awesome close-up of Rita opening her eyes up, and just the artwork is amazing. Michael killed it with this issue. I love it. I love it. Now, while all of this is happening, you've got the VR troopers, Valentina and Jun, sort of working together with this hostage negotiation. And the place we chose for the hostage negotiation is sort of this Japanese temple. And what's interesting is what Valentina brings up is that this is a sort of temple, or a sort of temple or a shrine that Ryan trained with his father at. So, all those early episodes of VR Troopers from back in the day when you would see Ryan training with his father, this is one of those places. So that's an interesting note. Not only that, the artwork looks fantastic, which I've said already. So it looks like the negotiations are being set up right now. And this is when it leads to the big climax of this issue, with everything going down when the hostage negotiations begin. And this is when the hostage negotiations begin with the VR troopers and the Rangers, where Lauren shows up and she's like, look, if we work together, we can work as a team, we can find Mark and we can find my family. But Lauren is soon jumped by the VR troopers and she's attacked by this gun electric rope thingy-majig, and she's quickly subdued and captured by the VR troopers, and she's laying there on the ground on pain, and everyone's confused about what's happening because they had no idea this was part of the plan. And Ryan's like, look, you guys walk away because she's the only one on Eltar's radar. you guys aren't, so you can walk away from this and we'll take it from here. And Valentina says, well, what are they going to do with her? What's going to happen to her? And Ryan's like, look, that's not my issue. I'm not paid enough to deal with that stuff, or that's above my pay grade. And Valentina's like, look, well, maybe you should know about that stuff that happens, because you're always telling me why I need to be afraid all the time of all these rangers, so let them go. And Ryan's like, look, Valentina, you have a lot more to lose, because what will happen to your father the minute he finds out that the Eltarians know you've joined forces with a ranger? And Valentina basically embraces her role as a ranger here, where a couple of issues ago, she wanted nothing to do with it. And she's like, look, I'm a ranger now, and there's no taking that back anymore. So this is when things get crazy. So you have Mark, and he freaking charges at Caitlin and manages to break free. Then you've got Lauren, like, headbutting Ryan right in the face. So you have all the Rangers coming together. So you've got all 5 Rangers together again once more. And Ryan's wiping the blood off his face, and he's like, look, one chance, last chance, is either her or all of you. And then Lauren replies with, it looks like it's going to be all of us, Ben. And you've got the other Rangers staring down the VR troopers. And then on the next page, we get this awesome splash page of everyone morphing. And it looks fantastic. I mean, I've been singing Michael's praises through this entire video. And once again, this is another fantastic page, because we get to see an awesome morphing sequence as all the helmets start forming on the Rangers' faces. But not only that, we get a good close-up look on their power coins, their giant power coins. And although we don't know what the name of the motif animals are for the Rangers yet, this is our first good look at them up close, which is great to see, because they've always been far away, they've been hard to see, but this is our first actual good look at them. So hopefully we'll find out what the themes for our Rangers are eventually. So this is when a brawl breaks out between both sides, and it is freaking amazing, because like I said, we kind of start seeing our heroes working together here. We've got freaking Lauren and Valentina facing off against Ryan. We've got Mark and Jun up against JB, and then we've got Orion up against Caitlin. And like I said, everyone's evenly kind of matched here. Some few good hits are thrown in against everyone, where some people are caught off guard, but the fight comes to a close when JB lets off an EMP, and it forces everyone to demorph, and they're barely able to move. So even though the EMP was kind of out of pocket, this is for the VR troopers to start sort of cleaning up the mess and start arresting everyone, so the fight didn't instigate further. But Ryan is concerned about Valentina, but she's upset. You've got Mark having another asthma attack with everything going on, and Jun's helping him out. And Ryan gives Lauren another chance by saying, look, it's either you or all of them. What is it going to be? Because this sort of hostage negotiation that Ryan planned, it went south right away. It probably didn't go the way he was expecting it was going to go in the end. But like I said, Ryan gives Lauren a chance to surrender, or he's going to arrest everyone here. But suddenly you hear a voice by saying, look, how about a third choice? Perhaps we take out all of you. And standing above one of the buildings is the brand new 6th Ranger for Power Rangers Prime, the Green Ranger, who is Rita Repulsa, which, spoilers, but the covers are out now. I've talked about it on the channel. You've probably seen them by now. But yeah, the 6th Ranger is Rita Repulsa, if you didn't know already. So that is where issue 8 ends of Power Rangers Prime. And this was a really good issue. This was a crazy way to end the second story arc with everything going on. And I can't wait to see where it's going to go next, where it's going to go moving forward with Power Rangers Prime. So we'll have to wait and see. But overall, I really enjoyed this issue, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen next month in Power Rangers Prime in August, when we have our Green Ranger showing up on the scene. So that's going to be a lot of fun. But anyway, guys, what did you think of Power Rangers Prime issue 8? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Tell me in the comments section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. And with that said, I will catch you guys later. Peace out. Take care. Bye.